Kirin J. Callinan, If I Could Sing, album review, let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning, here tonight to chat about this latest album from Mr. Kirin J. Callinan. He is a singer-songwriter out of Australia, a quirky fellow to say the very least if you are familiar with him. And for a while, a lot of people were pushing me in his direction, and his debut album, Am I a Woman Yet? I didn't really feel it that hard. I felt like the album overall had some decent ideas, but it was a little rough around the edges. But on the other hand, with his Embracism follow-up, I should say, I started to appreciate his music quite a bit more. This thing was much more of an eclectic mix overall. Glam rock, art pop, a little experimental music. It was a little dark at times too, all drawn together with Kirin's increasingly flamboyant, to say the least, performances. I actually loved it a whole lot. I was very excited to see what he would do with his next album, Bravado. Things got pretty insane on that album, as this is easily one of the most anthemic and just genuinely out there art pop records I had heard at the time. I mean, this thing was wild, touching down on everything that he had in the past, but also threw in some Euro dance and some post-punk as well. It's a pretty wild ride and a very enjoyable one. Now, the last time that we heard from Kirin was with his Return to Center covers project, which I thought had a really cool concept. I mean, look into it. You could own some of the equipment from this album because he returned it all to Guitar Center as soon as it was done mixing. That's cool. But at the end of the day, while some tracks on here were fantastic covers, it was still a covers album at the end of the day. And if you know my thoughts on covers albums, very few are truly great from start to finish. Now, I've been really hyped for this album for quite some time just because Kirin's been dropping some singles from this thing, and all of them have been really, really, really good. We're going to chat about all that and more. Bread of Love starts this album off, and I'm surprised, honestly, at how hyped it is. I mean, this track does get me on the edge of my seat in a big way. I also love Naeem's feature here. His ad-libs really pump me up. That, alongside of a very dramatic performance from Kirin, really does get me in the mood for this album. It's a very effective intro. Then we have Young Drunk Driver featuring Hubert Lenoir. This was released way back last year, and I've kind of been obsessed with it ever since. This track is so eclectic and brutally honest and in your face, and also incredibly catchy. I mean, the production on this track alone sounds like it's bouncing off the walls of the recording studio, and Kirin's performance absolutely matches that energy. I mean, this whole track is electric, from the pensive, very focused, very commanding verses to this chorus, which is like, what is going on? I mean, honestly, if this wasn't released last year, I would call it already that this would be on my list of singles for this year. It's a must-listen for fans of freaky art pop like myself. Also, Anæmic Adonis is also really fantastic. Another single that dropped last year, and it's so catchy. It's a wonderful weirdo jam full of personality, but my shock is honestly how much this album continues to go back to kind of old school synth-pop and new wave. But that's not a bad thing, because this track is upbeat, it's got charisma for days, it's got that freaky, sweaty, weirdo energy as well, and a really effective chorus. I would say overall, this is one of Kirin's more approachable tracks. I have a lot of the same things to say about Eternally Hateful as well. I mean, God, all the singles leading up to this album were pretty ridiculously good. It's got that drive, it's got that passion, but it's also loose and freaky and kinetic. And I love how passionate Kirin comes off. I mean, at the end of the day, as far as a songwriter goes, a lot of the tracks on this album are much more universally understood, I feel like. Vocal-wise, he also has not sounded this explosive maybe ever. And I love the absolute freak out of a finale. Also, If I Could Sing, as a title track to this album, is actually a really, really beautiful ballad. And that's not the last time you're going to hear me say that. There's actually quite a few on this record. I mean, this track in every way is a shot out of left field because it is so tender and sweet and tear-jerkingly beautiful. It's also really graceful. I'm shocked how many tracks on this album really, speak to my heart. And Kirin's performance here follows suit in every way. I mean, his vocals just sound so pure. It is really, really good. Overall, I'd say this is like the best thing I've heard this year as far as an album goes, especially as far as my ratings go. Kirin continues to bring the glam and the pizzazz to art pop and give it the freaky twist, but also giving it that human touch as well, and I'm really, really proud of him for that. However, there are a few tracks on this album, and I know I'm nitpicking here, but I can't let this slide. There are a few tracks on this album that I feel like maybe he went a little bit too far, like Chop Chop. This is such a downfall for this album. I mean, on every Kirin project, there's always that one track that he goes a little too far, gets a little bit too weird, and just comes off a little sloppy. That's what this is. Instrumentally, this track is so freaking sloppy and boring, and Kirin really does try to save this track with a very sleazy, very captivating and charismatic performance. That's fine, but lyrically, this track is a shit show. Untitled 8 is definitely also sort of a wake-up call of a track just because of how abrasive and noisy and gnarly it is. And that sounds, exciting on paper. This is easily the most rough around the edges thing that we get on this album. And there are some cool ideas throughout. I definitely get some like One O Tricks Point Never vibes, especially from the R+7 era. But while it's such a big reach, I don't think it's as exciting or as thrilling as I thought it would be. And Disdain's Not Dead as a finale is certainly, an interesting sort of dark ambient cut, which on paper sounds really like a great idea. And I give him credit because it's super twisted, it's super cold, but I just feel like it needed to be fleshed out a little bit more. It's certainly not bad though. Outside of that, this is a great art pop and new wave and synth pop record, and I'd say it's worth the wait because it did take a long time to get this album to us. Crazier idea, once again, instantaneous is the name of the game. This is a fantastic single. It's just another passionate, larger than life synth pop ballad from Kirin with an amazing amount of passion and just so much of a great performance. It's driven, it's upbeat, it's flashy. Every time this chorus rolls around, I want to belt it out. Plus, any track coming out in 2024 with an urgent as saxophone as this is, can take my money now. It's the truth is this album at its most new wave. It's very neurotic and weird, but it's a pretty streamlined track as well as Kirin gives us one of his most focused performances. It's just really nice to see Kirin freak out a little bit while keeping his feet firmly planted in the genre of art pop, but really just feeling loose. My little one is Kirin back in ballad mode, and it's not a bad thing because this is probably the most sincere track here. Intimate as well, and to an extent, this reminds me almost of like a cover of his from the Return to Center project, but my issue with a lot of those covers was that they didn't progress maybe as much as I hoped they would. And this track is still not progressive, and it's a little one-dimensional at times, but Kirin steps up his A game in a big way here. The drama in his voice, the passion, he really stepped it up here, and it's good. And in Absolutes is one final ballad that we get here. And to me, this is one of the most pensive and revealing tracks Kirin's ever wrote. And listen, let's just get it out there right now. This is not one of the more instantaneous tracks here. There are plenty, but this plus 6 minute track is not one of them. No, this is a very, really, seriously stripped down Kirin J. Callinan track. There's no bells, there's no whistles, there's no tricks. It's not even his most boisterous vocal performance, but yet he sounds larger than life. In a lot of ways, I would say that this is his most consistent effort, and in a lot of ways, more so, seemingly, this is the best of both worlds, because here, we're getting the grittier and darker and more somber tone of Embracism, but we're also getting the freakier and more eclectic side of albums like Bravado, and, coming together like this, I didn't know if those two sounds could balance each other out, but very clearly they did, because I do believe this is his most consistent project, but that's just me. I'm feeling a strong 8 on this project, but let me know what you all think down below. If you liked the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below if you would like for me to chat about it in the future. And until next time, have a great day, friends.